Kingsman: The Secret Service is based on a comic book by Mark Millar called simply The Secret Service, though after the movie came out it was retroactively named after the movie. Anyway, I actually initially passed on this one as it's another movie based on a Mark Millar comic, and I wasn't exactly thrilled about previous ones such as Kick-Ass and Wanted, especially since this is from the same director as Kick-Ass. But then again, the same director had also done Stardust, which I really liked, and X-Men First Class, which I loved, so yeah, there's some temptation, but still I stayed away from this initially until I finally decided to break down and actually watch this thing. The movie starts out with a mission of the Kingsman, which is a secret agency in the UK that isn't tied to any government, on which one of their agents dies to protect his comrade Harry, who's played by Colin Firth. Harry delivers the bad news to the agent's widow and his little boy Gary, who is usually called Eggsy, giving him a medal that has an emergency assistance number, that if he's ever in trouble, he can call the number. The movie flash forwards to Eggsy as a young man, played by Taron Egerton, and he's a bit of a ruffian, living the chav lifestyle after having dropped out of a Royal Marine training. He prefers to spend his days hanging out with his pals, drinking, and getting into trouble with petty crimes. His mother has remarried to a rough fellow who runs with all sorts of unsavory types and whom regularly butts heads with Eggsy. After he gets arrested for stealing the man's car, he calls the number on the medal and is bailed out by Harry, who begins the process of recruiting him into Kingsman. Though this is a slow process, he has to beat out a bunch of other potentials for only one spot, and save for Roxy, whom he becomes close friends with, they're all pretty much douchebags who treat him like trash because the Kingsmen are traditionally from the upper classes and Eggsy is a poor chav. Eventually, it comes down to Eggsy and Roxy, though she wins the spot rather than him as Eggsy washes out. Harry is working on an important case. A man named Valentine, played by Samuel L. Jackson, is up to something really strange, it seems. He's kidnapped a leading environmental scientist played by Mark Hamill, but then releases the guy. When Harry interrogates this dude, his head explodes. Valentine is an eccentric billionaire who also doubles as an eco-terrorist. His plan is to give away free SIM cards to whomever asks for one, then reduce the world's population to supposedly save the environment by using these cards to emit a signal that will increase aggression in people, forcing them to kill each other off. He's preparing an elite class of survivors who will wait out the hate-pocalypse in a bunker, and they'll be immune to the signal due to chips implanted in their heads, though he can detonate these at any time. Eggsy winds up having to return to Kingsman after tragedy strikes and work with Roxy and the Kingsman drill sergeant Merlin, played by Mark Strong, to storm Valentine's fortress and stop the signal from forcing mankind to destroy itself. The plot is interesting, but what makes Kingsman actually tick is twofold. Firstly, the acting is just top-notch all around. Taron Egerton and Colin Firth are just standouts in this movie. Samuel L. Jackson is, of course, always great as a villain. And we get more minor roles filled out by veterans that do great jobs like Mark Hamill, Michael Caine, Sofia Boutella. The performances work really well, as you get a feel of what the Kingsman organization is all about. The leader, Arthur, wishes to keep it high class, how Harry sees a lot of potential in the lower class, Eggsy. The theme of class struggle also spills over into the villain's plot, which involves the rich elite, world leaders, and politicians being invited to his new world, and everyone else is just going to kill each other. Aside from the themes, Kingsman has absolutely fantastic action scenes. Harry himself spells it out the best. He talks about spy movies, such as the James Bond franchise, and he claims that they've gotten a little too serious for his liking, and he preferred it when spy movies were ridiculous and over the top. Kingsman comes off as a loving tribute to the James Bond movies of the 70s and the 80s when Roger Moore was playing the part, and there was a huge focus on cool cars and gadgets and outlandish scenarios, though Kingsman actually does it better than most of the films that it's aping. The gadgets and the weapons the Kingsmen use are over the top and inventive and very cool, and the action scenes are choreographed super well. This is a movie that you could just watch over and over again and you'd never get bored with it. That being said, I have to sum this up as one of the best action movies that I've seen in a long time. It doesn't break any new ground because it's not trying to. It's a parody, a satire, a loving tribute, and an evolution of the 70s and 80s spy genre, all in one movie, and it gives us memorable characters with endearing personalities, quotable lines, set pieces that are never boring. In other words, it's kind of like a modern equivalent of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was accumulation of all the adventure serials of the 40s and 50s, or Star Wars, which did the same thing for samurai movies, believe it or not, even though it's set in space. I'm putting it in pretty lofty company for a good reason, because I think it's going to be viewed as super important in the future. People are going to look back on this film the same way that we look back on Raiders of the Lost Ark right now. I think it's going to be on the level of those films, and I have to give it a 10 out of 10. It's accumulation of a huge chunk of pop culture, and it's extremely entertaining.